Alright, so in 2023, I wanted to get through the backlog of games that I've been buying through Steam. I think I've got maybe 500 games, but ever since I bought the Steam Deck and also becoming a dad, I found the Steam Deck is the perfect balance to be able to get through my gaming log. So in 2023, I completed about 40 games, which I have here today, and I'm going to rank them in the difficulty. And I became a massive fan of Souls type games, and I absolutely hated Dark Souls in the past. But you know what? As a dad, I wanted to prove to myself that I still have it, that I can still kill bosses no matter how hard they are. And there's some pretty hard games in here, and I'm going to rank them from S to D. Because you know what, I love absolutely doing these tier lists. It's just a bit of fun, and yes, people are going to have different opinions, but you know, it's always good to have varied thoughts on these things. So, we're going to start with Dark Souls 2 in this list here. So, this was the Scholar of the First Sin edition, or Sin of the First Scholar, sorry, getting that mixed around. And Dark Souls 2 is actually the game that is my favourite of the series, which is probably an unpopular opinion because I think people are more either Dark Souls 1 or Dark Souls 3, the different direct in Dark Souls 2. But you know what? I actually love Dark Souls 2 the most. It had a lot of bosses in it, and it's definitely a difficult and fun game, and that's going into S tier. Next is Dark Souls Prepare to Die edition. So I did play them in order from DS1 to DS2 to DS3. And Dark Souls Prepare to Die, or Dark Souls 1, is also a pretty tough game. I remember playing this several years ago and actually could not get into it. But, you know, coming back to it with the mindset that I want to take down these bosses, I actually really enjoyed it. And every boss, you get better understanding their mechanics, understanding their attack patterns, how to dodge, how to parry. Maybe not so much parry in Dark Souls, more about dodging. I did play warrior or a sword or weapon wielding character in all the Dark Souls games. I didn't play a magic user, for example. It was mainly a warrior type fighter. Dark Souls 3. So I did enjoy this. It's much smoother, I would say, in terms of rolling than the other two. Dark Souls 2 did have, what was it? It had like a mechanic, one of the statistics, you had to kind of increase it to increase your dodge frame rate. In Dark Souls 3, you don't have that, but I did find it not as difficult as the Dark Souls 1 and 2, so I'm going to put that into some of the best boss fights that I did fight was in Dark Souls, probably across 2 and 3. Dark Souls 2, Fume Knight, one of the top 5 in my opinion. Dark Souls 3, I think one of the greatest fights I had was definitely the last boss, the Cinder Lord, which is a combination of, I guess, so many different battles, but the music atmosphere was fantastic. Alright, Yakuza Like a Dragon. So I have all the Yakuza games, but I never could get into Yakuza early on. I tried the new one, Yakuza Like a Dragon, and I know there's a new one coming out, and it's an absolutely long game. It kind of got a bit tedious at the end. It's not massively difficult once you know how to level up and stuff, but it's not overly easy at parts as well, so I'm going to put that into B tier. It did have a number of boss fights in there that were quite fun, and the storyline is quite good as well. Now, there was a lot of fanfare about Remnant coming out, Remnant 2, and I never even heard of Remnant before the announcement came out, and so I decided to play Remnant 1 before Remnant 2, and these games are some of the best Souls type games I've ever played. Very much like guns, demons. It was awesome. Some of the boss fights were absolutely difficult and hard. I got my butt kicked so many times. I would say that Remnant 1 is probably, it's not going to be S tier. I'm going to put it in A tier. Remnant 2, on the other hand, some of those bosses were absolutely a nightmare. Specifically, the last boss of Remnant 2, Annihilation, the phase 2 of that fight, where you're in some type of like a networking 3D type fight where there's lasers and all sorts of weird stuff happening. The performance frame rates were dropping. I didn't even know what was happening. It took me, I think, a couple of days to take a break to try and kill him. One of the hardest bosses I've ever faced is Annihilation. That's going into S tier. I'll probably put Dark Side. I'd probably put it here. It's just for Annihilation, it was just so hard, that boss. Alright, now we've got the king of all games, difficulty Sekiro. This is the game that I wanted to prove to myself that I still had it even though I'm a dad. And this is going right in the top slot. This is a hard game, especially the last fight with Isshin Sword Saint. I don't know how many times I died, maybe more than 50 times. I've never died so much in a game before, but Sekiro really taught me how to be patient and fight and fight and fight. So if you ever want a hard game, go to Sekiro as your top. Oh man, Sifu, this is also S tier. Tell you what, Sifu is probably, I don't even know where to put that. That is a hard game. That is a tough, you really can't even level up. You have to get good in this game to actually complete it. You know what, because you can't level up like Dark Souls or Remnant, it's going not as hard as Sekiro, but it's definitely a hard game. Especially the Yang fight, some of those fights, I forget some of the bosses, there's 5 bosses, but I think it was that lady in the third one, she was tough as nails. You really have to get the dodging and parrying correct to win in this game. Brutal game. Elden Ring. Now, Elden Ring is a fantastic game. It was the first Souls game I actually played that actually got me into the series. It's a very long game. I spent more than 100 hours on it. I think I killed every boss that was available, but it's not too difficult. The only bosses that I found difficult was, of course, Malenia and a couple of others. I did play a magic user in this, but I'm going to put this in A tier. Probably going to be here actually before, because Malenia is absolutely, she is hard. Malenia is definitely difficult. But you can level up in Elden Ring, and once you've leveled up, especially as a magic user for me was not too difficult in this game. I think if you go as a fighter, it might be an S tier if you are, but I've only played as a magic user. Hades, this is actually quite a hard game, and it's going into S tier as well. Some people can do those runs in 15-20 minutes. It took me a while to kill Hades for all the different things I had to do, so going into S tier. Lies of P, not as difficult as the Dark Souls series, fun game, but ultimately some of the bosses were not that difficult, quite straightforward. Spider-Man Remastered, man, this should probably go right into C tier. It's a great game, but the bosses are not that difficult. It's quite an easy game, almost childlike in nature. Alright, this is recommended by a friend. I think this is Plague Tale Innocence. Fun storyline, quite dark, but it's not too difficult. It's going to be C tier as well. 5 Dates, a nice little romantic game, going right into D tier. This is just a game I picked up. I think I saw a trailer of it. It's found fun, but it's definitely not a hard game at all. Diablo 4, maxed 100. I didn't even go into the first season. I did everything. I didn't want to do my character again. So I quit the game after I maxed it to 100 and never played it again. I think Blizzard made a few mistakes with this game, but it was a fun game, but not that difficult. That's C tier. My only game that I completed on the Nintendo Switch, the Mario Odyssey, very fun game, but it's not difficult. C tier. And just to say that I played pretty much all of these games on the Steam Deck, except for Diablo 4, which I played on the PC, and Mario Odyssey on the Nintendo Switch. Cyberpunk, I played this before the DLC. I've not played the DLC, but the original, I played it. Not too difficult. That's actually going to go into C tier as well. Batman Arkham Knight, I played that on the plane pretty much all the way through, 15-hour flight. We were able to max it out. Fun game, but not too difficult. Some parts were a bit more annoying than anything. Actually, no, that's probably is a C tier. Maybe B tier actually. Witcher 3. I played it actually before last year, but I completed it in 2023. Not too difficult, but there's a lot of quests. One of the greatest games probably ever made in terms of RPGs. but I don't think it's that difficult. We'll put it into B tier just for the length of it. Defense Grid 2, maybe it's not, yeah, not too difficult. Dishonored, I did not like this game at all. Some people love it, but I could not get into it. It's not too difficult, but there are some types where it's a bit annoying, so actually I want to put that as B tier. Devil May Cry 5, that's a B tier. Some parts are hard, but it's not that brutal of a game. It's fairly straightforward, nice action. Hell's Blade, pretty dark, some interesting boss fights. B tier. Doom Eternal, yeah, not Doom Eternal, yeah, that's going into C tier. Hitman, some of those actually, Hitman, I think most of the levels were quite easy and straightforward, to be honest. But there were some quite difficult missions, let's put that B tier. Hogwarts Legacy, great game, but the storyline was absolute garbage. The gameplay was great, the graphics was great. I think this was voted the Steam Deck's greatest game on Steam, but as difficulties go, fairly easy. 10 Dates is a sequel to 5 Dates, a fun game, but again, it's not. It's just basically you're a guy who just wants to figure out how to date someone, and then you gotta try and get to the end game with this and find your right partner, but fairly easy. Oh, Neo 2, this is going into S tier. Where would I put that? Neo 2, was it harder than Dark Souls? Some of those bosses were absolutely brutal. Man, I think I might have to put it. Yeah, I might have to put that there actually. Neo 2 was quite different. A lot of bosses, but some of those bosses, like the Lightning Gods of Yomi, there were some tough ones in there. So that was a hard one, but ultimately they're all kind of S tier. Papers, Please, that's not that difficult. D tier. The original Lords of Fallen. That is not that difficult, but there are some hard boss fights in that, so that's going into B tier. Shadow of Mordor, what a great game. The revenge system, but it's not difficult. Portal 2, some of them can be quite challenging. I'm going to put that into B tier because it's not almost straightforward. Ace Attorney, I mean, that is actually a pretty easy game to complete. Just in a courtroom, defending people. Resident Evil Village, I enjoyed this game, and it's been a while since I played Resident Evil, but this one I think is number 8, and it was fun. Some of it was pretty scary, especially that lady, that big lady, the vampire woman, and walking around the mansion in the first part was pretty spooky. So that's going to go into B tier. Sea of Stars, man, I did not like this game either. It was a long game, but it's pretty easy. I actually played this after I think I played Sekiro, and this was so easy that I had to kind of play a hard game after that game, which I think I ended up playing Lies of P after that. But Sea of Stars, great story, fun, old kind of kind of RPG style game, but it's very easy. Sleeping Dogs, what a great game, but difficulty wise, it's not that difficult. It's going to be in C tier. South Park, oh man, I played this on a plane, and you know what? Some of the scenes on this game is absolutely like I don't know, S-rated, X-rated stuff. Like I was embarrassed if people see me playing on the Steam Deck on that, and there's this weird stuff happening on that game. But it was a pretty easy game overall. That probably goes to the D tier as well. Titanfall 2, very short game, recommended by a friend. It wasn't that difficult. That's going into C tier. And then It Takes Two, which I played with my wife, and what a great co-op place. Probably the best ever co-op game you can ever play. The story, the music, the boss fights. The only thing about this is the frustrating thing is that, depending on who your partner is, sometimes they'll not be good at games. My wife, I love her to pieces, but this, there was some pretty tough time trying to get this game completed. So I'm going to put this in the A tier just because it's dependent on another person. And that is the tier maker of completed games that I have finished in 2023. and on to 2024 to get through the rest of my backlog.